Hi everyone and welcome to the channel. Today I've got a really fun kind of video to do. We're going to take a look at some morphs, and the reason I wanted to do this video is actually because I realised I've got this habit recently of looking at morph market and thinking about, you know, recessive projects and new codom genes or incomplete dominant genes, and I kind of zip past genes which have been around forever but are kind of the building blocks of the hobby really, and I just wanted to show you these what I would kind of call my top 5 codominant or dominant genes, and kind of show you what they can do in projects and some of the insane combinations you can make with them. So whether you want to breed or if you just want to get a pet, some of these genes can be involved in some really cool looking snakes. So to help me with this, I've got a snake which has one of these genes. Jerry, he's my acid pastel. He's a breeder, and I think Pastel has really made him like the cool combination morph he is. His best feature is, of course, his belly. He's a bit scrawny actually at the moment, but anyway, he seems alright, so I'll let him help. So obviously, before I get too far into it, there has been a change in the terminology we use. Now, I always grew up saying codom genes, codominant genes, and dominant genes. And now we've been told that we are supposed to say incomplete dominant genes instead of codom, and dominant stays the same. The difference being that incomplete dominant genes have a super form, whereas dominant don't, and the debate about what constitutes incomplete dominance versus codominance, etc., is probably, you know, beyond me. That's for geneticists and taxonomists, but I am trying to get myself to remember to say incomplete dominant instead of codom, but sometimes I forget. So that's why I've just named this, and lots of people do forget, so that's why I've just named this video, you know, top 5 codom and dominant genes. So, you know, whatever you decide, whether you want to adopt a new terminology or not, just remember that it's the same thing. Right. I can tell Jerry's already getting bored, so we may as well just jump into the top 5, go through them and see what you think. Right, so first up we've got Pastel, or Pastel as you say in the US, and this is kind of like the base gene for so many morphs in the hobby. You see it absolutely everywhere, but even if it's common as muck, it's still important to understand what it does. You can see it brightens the snake. This is quite a nice example obviously that I've chosen, and it's got this kind of two-toned yellowish pattern coming on the saddles, like the sides of the snake and the flanks. And then it has this effect on pattern as well, where it jumbles it up. It gives like the typical white lips, jumbled up pattern. And I'd say, you know, generally it should enhance the coloration and provide a bit more contrast as well. So you can do all kinds of things with Pastel. Even if it's really common, like I say, it is really good to know what you can do with it. So coming up now, we've got an example of one morph that I really like, is when you get a good bongo and you put Pastel into that morph or that combination. Good bongo pastels like this one are really cool. You can see it interacts really well. It just brightens all the colour. Sometimes bongo doesn't work as well as this with Pastel, but this time this one worked really well. Why is that? I have absolutely no clue. After the bongo, we move on to Pastel and acid. I guess leopard as well, but Pastel and acid like this one. This is Jerry when he was quite young. Again, you see like the jumbling up of the pattern is even more pronounced. And acid, which is a dark morph, the same morph as confusion by the way, it actually really adds some contrast and some brightness into a morph that otherwise can be quite dark and quite dull. And finally, sort of last but not least, well maybe least in some people's opinions, is when you add Pastel to clown. This is a Pastel spot nose clown that I can't remember if I produced or traded this one. Anyway, some people hate Pastel in clown combos, some people love it. This particular combination, I really like it. I think it gives them a stunning kind of spotted look on the head. This one's actually called Spot as well. So I haven't really got too much imagination in names, but you can see how cool it is in some, you know, recessive combinations. Now let's move on to Enchi. So we've got an Enchi here that was produced by New England Reptile Distributors, or NERD, who have been in the game forever. and this is on their morph market, so I'm giving them credit here. And they've actually been nice enough to give us a little description of what it does, and this is precisely it. The Enchi gene is a very unique gene when it comes to breeding genetics. It brightens and cleans pattern as well as pattern reduction. So you can see there's kind of a nice, colourful, almost normal looking ball python here, but the pattern is reduced and we're going towards some sort of saddles and almost banding. Okay, and this is a typical Enchi. Like, you could be forgiven for thinking that maybe this doesn't look like an exceptional snake, but when you put it into combos, this is an incomplete dominant gene as well, by the way, so it's got a super form. When you put it into combos, it makes some really unusual stuff, and I find it's particularly cool when you mix it with clown. So what do we got here? Next up, we've got an Enchi blackhead clown. Is that all it is? Yeah, just Enchi and blackhead clown. And obviously blackhead plays a big role here, but Enchi really does add like a richness of colour into clown combos, and that is one of the main reasons to have it if you are breeding, because you can take clown projects to a whole other level, particularly if you like that kind of rich, deep, reddy brown kind of colour. And I mean, that's not all it can do. It works really well in some other combos. So for example, this is an Enchi combo, and I have no idea what's in it. All I know is there's Enchi in it. What else is in it is anyone's guess. I haven't got a clue. But you can see like the Enchi influence has given the deeper, richer colour. Maybe there's orange stream in there, I'm not sure. But it's given deeper, richer colour. It's reduced the patterns and given that saddle effect. And it just makes a really cool, I'm guessing incomplete dominant, or co-dom, as some people still say, combo. So now we move on to another incomplete dominant gene, which is cinnamon. Cinnamon again has been around for a long time, and I mean really it's got a nice, it's like a nice rich kind of browny cinnamony colour when you see one in real life, but when you look at them, I mean again, it doesn't really look it doesn't look that special. It kind of just looks like a really dark ball python with slightly different patterns. Some of them have a tendency for a bit of striping on the last third of their body, but it's kind of like a rich coloured dark morph basically. And it's worth mentioning that most people consider black pastel the same thing or almost the same. I can't remember if that's been confirmed by genetic testing or not yet. That's something to look into, but they both have similar effects on colour and pattern, and it was much more popular, but you can still do very cool stuff with it. Like you can make all kinds of combos, and as I said, because it's incomplete dominant gene, there is a super form of super cinnamon, and this looks like this. That is just a really cool, almost black, not quite black, but almost black animal, often with white lips, but really nice all over coloration. Now the only thing with this is some people say that they have a tendency towards duck billing, which is a weird deformation of the kind of the rostrum or the snout. Personally, I can't really comment on this because I've never seen one with duck billing in real life. So until I've seen it in the flesh, I don't really want to comment on that, but a lot of breeders do say that that is something that happens. And now, onto where I think actually cinnamon is best in combinations, in my humble opinion, is in cinnamon albino combination morphs. This is a cinnamon albino produced by Left Side Reptiles out of Georgia, and it's just a really nice morph. It really kind of darkens and gives contrast to albino morphs, and I mean if I was going to do any albino project, I would like to get either acid cinnamon or leopard or blackhead or some kind of dark morph in there to give contrast to it. So now this is like the new kid on the block. This is an orange dream ball python. Again, another incomplete dominant one. The only dominant one on this list is at the end. That's the pinstripe, by the way. But this is another incomplete dominant one, and this was produced by East Valley Exotics in Tempe, Arizona, or Tempe. Again, I have no idea how to pronounce that, but it's very cool. And you can see it's got a bit of banding. It's got this lovely orange color, and you can imagine why they called it an orange dream. That's quite a cool name for a morph, but it's a cool looking snake. But just like the others, it doesn't look, incredible at first sight. But I actually found some very incredible morphs being produced with this now. And it's worth getting it into any project that you do basically, or looking at them before you buy a pet as well. So this is an Orange Dream Spot Nose Fire, and I mean that's really cool. Spot Nose, you can see the effect on the head, that spot nose, that funny pattern. But it's reduced the pattern nicely, given it some banding and added some brightness and contrast, and a bit of orange too. You know, Spot Nose Fire, which probably would have been a reasonably dark morph otherwise. And if you go and look on Aussie Boyd's morph market, they have some really, or he rather, I think he's a one-man band, has some really, really incredible orange green combination morphs, and probably the best ones, you know, on the planet. Basically, that is his thing. And like I said, I think it was Aussie Boyd's who first produced Orange Dream. And this one is a Orange Dream Enchi Cypress Banana Female Maker Clown. You know, you can see the price tag, it's pretty hefty, but this would obviously be worth it if you were breeding. I mean, that's an incredible looking snake, and it really doesn't get much better. It's just a really, really cool looking animal. I mean, there's nothing more to say about it, really. That intensity of colour is very hard to produce. That is what I would say on this kind of animal. That's really difficult. Anyway, up next is... what was this again? Pinstripe, of course. Easy to recognise. I don't know why I got lost for a second there. But anyway, this is the only dominant gene on my list. Pinstripe has been in so many combination morphs over the years. Obviously, it doesn't have a super form, but it is almost like a super in itself, because it just does so much to pattern. Obviously, it's not super, so you only get 50% of the offspring will carry it when you breed it. But it does so much to pattern that it's kind of makes some unique morphs, some unique combination morphs that can't really be copied by other genes too easily. So, for example, if we go to this first one, this is a baby that I produced. And this one I'm about to show you is simply Pinstripe and Pastel, right? So look at the difference. That is a Pastel Pinstripe, or Lemon Blast, and I make no secret of the fact that I really like Lemon Blast. They're one of my favourite morphs, and if you put a nice bright pastel into it, you get these little babies that they're cheap, because they're common genes, they're cheap genes, but they're really bright and they're really beautiful, and if you're a breeder, it's handy to have some of these, because they'll just sell really quickly. Almost always. Well, in my experience anyway. Obviously, last year or two things have changed a bit, but anyway, it's just a really, really pretty morph, and it's got a lovely intense colour that Pastel on its own or Pinstripe on its own doesn't really have. And they're, like I say, they're one of my go-to morphs, they're one of my favourites, but you can go a lot further. So this is a Pinstripe Clown Desert Ghost, produced by RP Reptiles out of California, and this is, you know, it's on a whole other level. That sandy colour is coming from the Desert Ghost. Desert Ghost is kind of like a yellowy type of hypo almost, but that sandy colour is coming from that. The reduced pattern though is kind of coming from the Clown influence and the Pinstripe combining. The Pinstripe is just made really, really tiny kind of strips of little bits of pattern all over, and this is, I mean, I think this would be very hard to copy using other genes. In my opinion, at least, it would be very, very difficult. It's kind of like, well, I mean, you could use other genes to get a very reduced pattern on a clown, but the way these little bits of pattern are so clean, I really think that is in part, well, mainly down to how Pinstripe interacts with Desert Ghost. So again, this is a high-end morph that's been made with one of its most important ingredients, perhaps, being this cheap, dominant morph that's been around for years. Right, so now we've had a look at those morphs and some of the really kind of cool stuff you can do with them. The kind of elephant in the room is the fact that I've picked my top 5. But there are plenty that I've left out, like Mojave, for example. Can't really think of many more off the top of my head, but I mean, Black Pastel, obviously, it's very similar to Cinnamon. And I've left out tons, so there are all kinds of like honourable mentions that we could have. So if you think there was more that should have been on the list that I haven't covered, please do let me know. Let me know in the comments what you think are the real, building blocks of the hobby now. Maybe there's some that would have deserved more of a place than Enchi on there. I don't know, maybe more common. I'm not sure. But as always, I hope you enjoyed the video and found some of the information useful at least. I'm just watching Jerry here strangle himself. But as always, please do tune in next week. Comment, like, share, subscribe. Thank you very much.